Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Thank you guys for joining me here on a Saturday evening, just a couple of days before the start of NFL free agency. And the Pittsburgh Steelers do not have their solution at the quarterback position as we currently sit here today. And I do expect an answer and that solution to arise for this football team here over the course of the next few days. And on today's show, I'm going to be breaking down what I believe the Pittsburgh Steelers' approach is going to be heading into these next couple days, because I've been getting a lot of questions. Jack, what are the Steelers doing? Who are they interested in? Are they only interested in Rodgers? Are they going to extend offers to guys like Kyler Murray and Malik Willis and all these other guys? Well, today I'm going to let you guys know what I think the Steelers' approach is going to be. And this is going to definitely start to kick off some of the great coverage we're going to have here on Steelers Talk over the next few days. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button, because tomorrow, not only are we going to have a great AM video come out tomorrow for you guys, but also we'll be going live during the afternoon to take your questions on the Pittsburgh Steelers as we get to the final countdown before the start of NFL free agency on Monday afternoon. And then, of course, we'll be live for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at the very least. We might be live Thursday and Friday as well, depending on how the week goes, to kind of usher in some of these new veteran players that the Steelers will be bringing in. And we do expect the Steelers to be somewhat busy. They've got quite a bit of cap space to use. Obviously, they have to find some sort of solution at the quarterback position here over the next week or so. So it's going to be a very exciting week. If you don't want to miss any of our breaking news updates, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and we greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. So let's get into today's video, where we're going to be breaking down what I believe the Steelers' game plan is going to be here over these next several days as they look for their solution for their starting quarterback here heading into the 2026 NFL season. Now, I would say the first thing that you guys need to realize is that the Steelers are not going to be doing any sort of tank situation. They're not going to have a quote-unquote reset year, anything like that. They want to get the quarterback in this building that they believe gives them the best chance to win a Super Bowl next year. Now, you can have the opinion that this team is not ready to win a Super Bowl, that they shouldn't be attempting to win one, that they should be trying to rebuild. It's just not the way that Art Rooney, Omar Khan, and Mike McCarthy are approaching this offseason. So that's the first thing that you have to realize. The quarterback that they will be bringing in this week is the quarterback that they believe gives them the best chance to win a 7th Lombardi Trophy next February. So just keep that in mind here in terms of their strategy. Now, part one of their quarterback strategy is what they've been doing and what I assume they've been doing here over the last several weeks, where they've had a number of conversations with last year's starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, and they have told him that if he wants to commit to the team at any point before the start of NFL free agency, the job is his. And Omar Khan has said things like they're leaving the door open for him. Mike McCarthy has said that they definitely want him back for next season. And it definitely seems like Rodgers is their plan A. They would love to have him back because he's got continuity, not only in Mike McCarthy's offense, playing in this system for a very long time in Green Bay, but also he's got the continuity with guys like DK Metcalf and Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington and Jalen Warren, guys that he played with last year. And if they bring back Kenneth Gainwell, another player there that he has a year of experience with. So the fact that pretty much everybody in the locker room wants Rodgers back, the fact that he's got that established chemistry, the fact that he's got more playoff game experience than pretty much anybody else in the AFC outside of Patrick Mahomes, all those things lend credence to the idea that he gives this team the best chance to compete for a championship next year. And we've been talking about that on this channel over the last several months, why I would love for Rodgers to come back, why he would be my plan A and my number one option to be this team's starting quarterback this year. But at this point, obviously Rodgers has not made his decision. He seems poised to probably test the market in some capacity once we get to Monday's legal tampering period. And that might be to see what the Steelers are looking for, kind of waiting to see what the Steelers are going to do at receiver. It's very possible that Rodgers doesn't want to sign on the dotted line with the Steelers if they're not going to make a move at wide receiver 2 that he approves of, because last year could definitely make the case that he did not have enough help in the wide receiver room. We've certainly made that case on this channel all offseason long. So from Rodgers' perspective, he might say, I want to come back to Pittsburgh, but I want to make sure they get a good wide receiver 2 to pair with DK Metcalf before I officially sign on the dotted line. Another reason why he may have not told the team that, he wants to come back. And by the way, he could still, before the legal tampering period. I mean, tomorrow it's very possible that we get word that he's struck a deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers just hours before the legal tampering period begins. But another reason why he might get to free agency is he wants to see what other teams have to say. Teams like the Minnesota Vikings, who are currently looking for kind of a short-term veteran solution at their quarterback position, especially to compete and maybe even mentor their young quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. And the fact that Rodgers and Kevin O'Connell are extremely close, the fact that they've got maybe the best receiver in football and Justin Jefferson on their team, Jordan Addison, one of the better wide receiver 2s. They just restructured T.J. Hawkinson's deal today. All those factors certainly play a factor, not to mention the defense that Brian Flores brings there in Minnesota. I imagine that is a pretty attractive place for Rodgers. Apparently he wanted to play for Minnesota last year, so it's possible that, if Minnesota comes calling, Aaron would seriously consider going to Minnesota, especially because Kyler Murray is not available to sign until Wednesday. I would not be surprised if we hear some Rodgers to Minnesota buzz, especially on Monday and Tuesday, if he hasn't signed a contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it sounds like at this point the Steelers have kept the door open for Rodgers to tell them, hey, I'm all in. I'll sign on the dotted line. I'm in on the 2026 season, and he hasn't taken that chance yet. So if we get to Monday and the legal tampering period begins with Rodgers not signing a contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't think that means the Steelers will give up on him. I think that they will still have that door open, so to speak, for Aaron Rodgers. And, well, when and if he wants to walk through that door, they're going to allow him to do that. But I also think that they're going to offer contracts to any and all of the quarterbacks that they believe are bona fide QB1 options for them heading into this season. And what I mean by a bona fide starting quarterback option is somebody that if you sign them, you're not having an open competition, right? So it's not like way older veteran like a Kirk Cousins or a Joe Flacco or anything like that where they would probably be coming in to compete. It would be somebody like, in my opinion, the two guys I would be looking at are Malik Willis and Kyler Murray. Malik Willis, depending on the price tag, I'm sure the Steelers have a number that they have in mind that they would send a contract offer to Willis and his representation on Monday. And if that's not good enough, if somebody outbids the Steelers, then it is what it is. But if Willis likes what the Steelers are offering and is willing to accept the offer, I think the Steelers would sign him on Monday. So keep an eye out for that if we get to that point. But also Kyler Murray, especially if Willis, say he goes to the Cardinals or the Dolphins or somewhere else on Monday, then Kyler Murray becomes available on Wednesday when he officially gets released. And I think for the vet minimum, I think that is something that the Steelers would consider, even though I don't think Murray is a perfect quarterback option for the Steelers. He's undersized. He's only played in one game in his entire career where the weather was below 45 degrees. He's only played with a wet football once in his NFL career, and it was like the worst game of his career. I question just how long of a career he's going to have as a starting caliber quarterback, just because he's approaching 30 and he's a guy that is very reliant on his athletic ability. As we know, that begins to fade around that age 30 marker, especially if you've had lower body injuries, which Kyler has had multiple of. But listen, man, at this point, you can get him for the vet minimum for somebody that's been a pretty darn good starting quarterback in this league. And I do think Mike McCarthy would, who's been very complimentary of Kyler over the years, by the way, would tailor the offense to his strengths and his weaknesses. So, if Kyler is willing to come to Pittsburgh on the vet minimum, I'm sure that's something the Steelers would consider as well. And then essentially what they're going to do is they're going to send out these offers when they're allowed to send out these offers to Willis, to Kyler, and essentially it's going to be, first come, first serve between Rodgers, between Willis, between Murray, any other bona fide quarterback options. Maybe they consider Geno a bona fide quarterback option. I personally wouldn't, but all the quarterbacks that they feel like could be their unchallenged QB1, they will send offers out to, and pretty much the first one to accept their offer is going to get the job. Now, you might be saying, but Jack, what if Kyler Murray goes to Minnesota? What if Malik Willis goes to Arizona? And by the end of the day, Wednesday, we're still waiting on an Aaron Rodgers decision. Well, if that's the case, I think Pittsburgh is going to have to kind of get together and kind of have a discussion as far as how long are they going to be willing to wait. Like, are they going to be willing to wait a couple weeks, a couple months like they did last year to make sure they get the best quarterback option on the market? It's going to be, that would be an interesting decision, because Omar Khan said at the NFL Combine that this isn't going to go the way that it did last year, where they're going to wait and wait and wait months and months and months for Aaron Rodgers. So at some point, they would have to go to their final option here. And, I think the worst case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this whole kind of game of quarterback musical chairs, where let's say they miss out on Malik Willis, they miss out on Kyler Murray, and Aaron Rodgers, is just taking too long to make a decision. He retires, he decides to go to Minnesota, whatever the case may be, and they have to go with a different quarterback option. I think at that point, what they do is they would cut Mason Rudolph from the team, save $3 million by doing that, and then they would bring in a bridge veteran type, somebody that would, has starting experience, has a lot of it, can be a mentor to young quarterbacks, and could theoretically raise the floor of the Steelers quarterback room next year. Someone like a Geno Smith, someone like a Kirk Cousins, somebody like a Joe Flacco, potentially a guy like Andy Dalton or Jacoby Brissett, a couple guys that you might have to trade for, but would be really good, veteran bridge options that have mentored young quarterbacks in the past and have been pretty decent players in their own right. I don't think if you bring in any of those guys, they're your long-term solutions at the quarterback position. I think you sign them to one-year deals, close to the vet minimum, and you give them a chance to kind of establish themselves as this team's starting quarterback. But you also open up a competition heading into camp with not only Will Howard, who the Steelers are very high on. They believe that he's got some starting potential based on what he showed in practice last year. But then I would also say, because you cut Mason, there's still another opening to bring in somebody else that maybe has higher upside that can compete with, probably Geno Smith, I think would be their first option there. Somebody with experience with DK Metcalf, smart veteran that can read defenses pretty well. I think Geno would probably be their first option among that group of, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Joe Flacco. I think Geno would probably, if he's still available at that point, would probably be the favorite. But then you have Will Howard on the roster as well, and then you could bring in another guy with some upside, someone like a Trey Lance, who showed some really good things in LA last year in the preseason, showed some decent things with the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy at the end of the 2024 season. You could look at someone like Will Levis, who was put in a really bad situation there in Tennessee. He actually, if you look at his numbers, 2024 Will Levis played better than Cam Ward, the number one overall pick last year, in a very similar situation in Tennessee. I think Levis would be an interesting one to bring in. Anthony Richardson would be another very interesting one to bring in and compete for the starting job here in Pittsburgh. There's some other options out there that they could consider as another, younger, quarterback option, not to mention the options they have in the draft. They could bring in a Ty Simpson in round one this year. They could bring in a Drew Aller or a Garrett Nussmeier, one of those guys, to, try and, win this job outright in Latrobe next year. Now, obviously, I think the Steelers would prefer to land either Aaron Rodgers, Malik Willis, Kyler Murray is probably the three guys that I think they have on their radar. And we'll see, in that first come, first serve scenario, if any of those guys bite. Right now, if I had to guess, my best guess would be that Aaron Rodgers will be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers next year. First of all, I'm just not sure if the Steelers are going to be, the number one choice for Malik Willis or Kyler Murray. And once those two guys kind of pick their spots, especially if Murray goes to Minnesota, then I think the decision for Rodgers to come back to Pittsburgh is going to be pretty quick. But I don't expect this thing to drag on too long. I do think we'll have probably some sort of solution at the quarterback position sometime by the end of, this upcoming week. And we're going to be chronicling every single step of the way right here on Steelers Talk, guys. So I just wanted to get in front of a camera today, kind of let you guys know what I'm expecting from this football team in terms of the quarterback pursuit over the next few days, because, there's a lot of different moving parts here, and it can be really, really confusing. And, they've probably got interest in multiple quarterbacks at this point. Like, I feel like that's maybe the main thing people get confused is like, what's the one quarterback that they're pursuing and targeting? It's like, it doesn't exactly work that way because they're free agents. And, they have, as Rodgers said himself this week, it takes two to tango, right? So I'm sure the Steelers have a couple different quarterbacks that they feel like are legitimate QB1 options for them, where if they can get them, they'll be their starting quarterback for this year. But hopefully the Steelers in this game of quarterback musical chairs are not left without a QB, right? Because in that scenario, you're going to have to go with a Geno Smith for a year and, maybe trade for an Anthony Richardson and kind of get nuts with the way that you approach the quarterback position this year. So I'm certainly hoping for the best here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I had to guess, like I said, guys, I think by the end of this week, Aaron Rodgers, we will have a final decision from him, and he will sign another one-year deal to return to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I also think that they're going to probably bring in some of his friends in free agency, especially Romeo Doubs, who we talked about yesterday, maybe Elton Jenkins, an offensive lineman that is currently slated to hit the open market this year, maybe Teron Johnson, formerly from the Buffalo Bills, a cornerback that the Steelers might decide to bring in. So I definitely think it's going to be an interesting week, guys. Again, we're going to have probably 3 videos of Steelers content for you guys tomorrow, the day before NFL free agency, getting you guys ready for the craziness that's going to be happening throughout the week when free agency opens on Monday. So thank you guys so much for joining me here this evening. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And until then, guys, here we go, Steelers.